welcome to today's webinar. My name is David Kurtz. I'm a Research and Analysis Director at GlobalData, and I'll be your host. It's a pleasure to have you with us today to discuss upgrades in mining, increasing efficiency and productivity. Today's guest speaker is Jonathan Leland, Mobil Lubricants Field Engineer, and today's webinar is brought to you by Mobil. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform. The platform is browser-based, so if you disconnect, click the link you received via email to rejoin the session. Please use the help widget if you experience any technical difficulties or require any more assistance. Please use the related content box to access any additional resources, such as the new white paper from Mobil on optimizing uptime, the essential steps to keeping your equipment strategy on track, which would be a great reference for you after the webinar. I'm going to be starting off with a brief presentation looking at technologies in mining and how they can support improvements in productivity, safety, and cost reduction before handing over to Jonathan to discuss lubrication best practices for mining. Before we look at the trends in technology, it's worthwhile first considering the situation in which mining companies find themselves at the moment, and it's fair to say that miners face a considerable array of challenges. For example, there's huge pressure to identify new potential mines as current reserves are being depleted. But as you can see on the left-hand side of the chart there, ore grades are declining, and it's increasingly challenging to find new mineral deposits, particularly those which are feasible to extract economically. And miners are having to go to more remote sites and greater depth to access resources. And as grades are falling, so the volume of material that needs to be moved by machines for each ton of ore increases as well. And combining this with the ore being in less accessible places, so the cost to mine is also increasing. And related to that, as we can see on the right, labour productivity is declining in key markets, with labour productivity in Australia, for example, 20% lower than it was 30 years ago. On top of this, there's the challenge of safety. According to the International Labour Organization, mining accounts for around 1% of the working population, but about 8% of accidents. And mining is also suffering from labour shortages. A 2020 McKinsey survey found that 86% of mining executives struggle to recruit and retain skilled workers. And from GlobalData's own jobs analysis, mining is one of the sectors with the longest amount of time needed to fill vacancies. With all these challenging it faces, it's encouraging to see technology investment is increasing in the mining sector, and this has been particularly apparent as the mining sector has recovered from something of a trough about 10 years ago. A GlobalData survey last year of around 150 mine sites found that digitalization of the mining process had moderately progressed or was considered well advanced at 77% of mines, as we can see on the right-hand side there. And spend on technology has been growing, with expectations that growth will even accelerate over the coming years, as you can see on the left. Sizable shares of technology spend is being directed to areas such as cloud computing, networking, communications, and IoT, all helping sites to operate more efficiently and safely. And although it's quite small at present, we're seeing increasing spend on AI, and it's expected to become much more widespread in the next 5 years. As part of our mine site surveys, we found over 50% of tier 1 miners felt that AI would have a noticeable impact on their sites within the next 5 years, 8% of which said it was already having an impact, while for the smaller miners or non-majors, the majority of this group felt it would be within the next 10 years. At GlobalData, we've got what we call a future of work framework as well, which highlights the wide range of technologies being implemented. Starting in the top left there with visualizations. Here, things like digital twins can run simulations of mining activities and help to test new methodologies and planning schedules. VR and AR can be used to train workers as well and help them deal with challenging events in real life and avoid accidents. Connectivity is a must-have for all mining sites, of course. Developing internet capabilities in mines is vital for communications and improves safety through fast response times to accidents, and helps make operations more efficient by optimizing processes through real-time monitoring of connected devices, such as on equipment and plant, and even on workers using smart devices. And better connectivity through 5G, of course, also facilitates automation. Effective collaboration among workers in the mining sector is also essential, although it needs sufficient connectivity between personnel on all parts of the site, and so is ultimately going to be dependent on connectivity tools such as 5G and industrial internet. Interpretation is an interesting one, and one with significant potential. mining companies are already using AI to enhance operational precision and efficiency. And by analysing their extensive data sets that they have, AI algorithms can help companies to make more informed decisions, predict equipment failures, predict collisions and accidents, and optimise resource allocation. And then at the top right, in automation, we're seeing autonomous haulage systems active in a number of different mines, and they help to remove human error from the haulage process and also increase productivity through constant availability. And drones as well can deliver quick and inexpensive surveying, mapping, tailings dam monitoring, and hazard identification. And overall, all these elements combine to create smart mines where much of the work is automated, maintenance is done on a predictive basis, and safety is improved. And over the next few slides, I'm going to look at some specific examples of predictive maintenance, collision avoidance, and autonomous equipment, and see how they are progressing at the moment. So firstly, predictive maintenance. Here, miners are collecting real-time data from sensors on their equipment and using data analytics to assess its condition and replace components before they fail and cause larger problems. And as well as the continued productivity of that piece of equipment, it can also save money in parts and labour, extend the life of the equipment, and potentially also improve health and safety of workers by avoiding injuries. And we're seeing the cost declining for this technology with lower cost of sensors, improved computing power and bandwidth, and general technological advancements, and also some significant savings from the maintenance itself. And one major gold producer, for example, implemented predictive maintenance within its fleet on a mine, saving $500,000 a year and reducing the number of failures from engine, brake, or suspension issues by 30%. Over time, we've seen a greater take-up of predictive maintenance for mobile equipment. On the left-hand side, you can see a chart there from our survey that we've been running for a number of years. And between 2020 and 2024, the share of mines that said they've made at least moderate investment in predictive maintenance for mobile equipment has risen from 60% to 74%. And the share having made no investment has dropped from 26% to 11%. By region, we've also seen a relatively high take-up of predictive maintenance in Australian mines already. And as you can see in the top right from the latest survey, an average of 48% of mines expect to invest in this technology in the coming years, with high shares moving in this direction in Canada and South Africa, for example. And in the bottom right chart, GlobalData, we also track jobs advertised in the mining sector, and the number of active jobs each month related to predictive maintenance has risen about tenfold in the last 5 years. So it's certainly a technology that's evolving and accelerating within the sector. And then technologies such as collision avoidance and fatigue detection are helping to improve safety and reduce accidents and fatalities on mine sites. From our recent survey, as you can see on the left there, we've seen the degree to which miners have invested in collision avoidance, fatigue detection, and wearable technology increasing over the last few years. And when it comes to collision avoidance specifically, we've also explored where miners' fleets were expected to align with the EMESRT framework. That's the Earth Moving Equipment Safety Roundtable framework. This framework has got 9 levels of incident control. The lower levels are concerned with design and operation of equipment, while the top 3, levels 7, 8, 9, are concerned with reactions. More details shown just underneath the chart there. But it's interesting to see that 60% of mines that we surveyed expect to achieve levels 8 or 9, which have reaction times in the seconds or milliseconds for the majority of their fleets within 24 months. And interesting as well that a level 9 is now mandatory in South Africa. And then generally, there have been improvements to safety across the whole mining process. Injuries and fatalities have been declining over time, and you can see that in the bottom right chart there, where we've got fatalities, total recordable injury frequency rates, and lost time injury frequency rate trends. The exception being 2019, when there was the Brumadinho disaster in Brazil. So there's been some general improvements in safety, and it's worthwhile saying that the data here is taken from 56 different miners, and of those, 21 successfully achieved 0 fatalities in 2023. A third major technological development, which is driving productivity, safety, and cost reduction, is automation. And we're seeing autonomous trucks, drills, loaders, and other machines becoming more common on mine sites, with an almost 5-fold increase in autonomous surface trucks since 2020, as you can see on the right-hand side there. When it comes to countries, Australia dominates. Around 15% of surface trucks in Australia are either autonomous or autonomous ready, with the figure around 10% in Canada already as well. And benefits that are cited by OEMs and mining companies for autonomous equipment include things like a 15 to 30% improvement in productivity, 15 to 20% reduction in operating costs, 15% increase in machine life, 10% lower fuel consumption and maintenance, 80% reduction in accidents, and a 40% increase in tyre life. And although not as numerous as surface trucks at the moment, we're also seeing an increase in the number of underground trucks and loaders and drills, which can be operated autonomously. And these are increasing both as miners purchase new autonomous equipment and also retrofit existing ones to operate autonomously. And to finish up, just looking ahead at some of the expectations and also some barriers that we see as well. Although not all mines are going to be suited to running machines autonomously, as you can see from our 2024 survey, where we asked about the expectations of investment within the next 2 years, a large share of respondents are expecting to invest in predictive maintenance for mobile equipment, and a reasonably significant shares as well for collision avoidance and fatigue detection. In terms of barriers, though, when it comes to AI technology specifically, standing in the way of investment here are familiar concerns, particularly the cost of technology and the need for technology to become more proven. And often mining is seen as a slightly slower adopter of technologies compared to some other sectors. But it's interesting that with the considerable savings that are expected to arise from investing in AI-related technology, down the bottom there, we can see return on investment as a relatively low barrier to adoption. So to conclude, although already 2/3 of miners have made at least moderate progress with digitalization and technology investment in order to overcome those challenges of productivity, safety, and cost, automation and AI offer significant benefits with autonomous haulage, predictive maintenance, and collision avoidance, all helping to overcome these challenges. And as costs fall and technology becomes more proven, so AI-related technology adoption is expected to be significant across the majors within the next 5 years and all miners within the next 10. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time. I'd like to welcome Jonathan Leland now to present on lubrication best practices in mining. Just a reminder for the audience, in order to ask any questions, please send them in via the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Over to you, Jonathan.
All right. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate you sharing a lot of those key insights. And just from our perspective at Mobil, we understand the mining world is changing and we're ready to move along with it. So thank you for some cool insights. So I'm going to start my presentation with a quote, because I think it really hits on a really key factor here. So I'm just going to read it for you. It says, "Success is neither magical nor mysterious. Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying the basic fundamentals," by this gentleman, Jim Rohn. I think this is a good thing to remember, because some people look at somebody that's very successful, or it seems like they're doing everything correctly. And I think this applies in the world of sports, but also in our professional lives as well, that if we can understand the basic fundamentals and just get used to consistently applying them, it will lead to success. And I like to say results that are uncommon. So keep this in mind, because we're going to be reviewing a lot of the fundamentals today. So I'm going to talk about 4 different areas. The first is the common goal. And what do I mean by this? But this is really referring to the vision of your lubrication program for your mine or your company or your division of the mine. And because the vision of your lubrication program really drives the culture, which culture is one of the hardest things to change and takes the longest to change. But if you have it in the right place, it really is the foundation of where you need to be. The second is learning from oil analysis. And what I mean is truly reviewing your data, understanding trends, and like David said, I really do think that things like AI and other tools where it's going to take a lot of the stress off of the people to truly learn from things. But learning from oil analysis and applying those learnings to make advancements is a best practice for sure. The third, life extension and synthetics. At Mobil, we've proven with Mobil synthetics, there is a significant difference between mineral products and synthetics. And I'll just talk about some of those benefits, extending life of the oil, but also of the machine components that are being lubricated. And lastly, energy efficiency. Kind of building off of point number 3, we have proven with Mobil products, there is a significant upside of energy efficiency with Mobil synthetics. So jumping into the first point, the common goal, creating a lubrication culture for success. Like I talked about, culture is the biggest thing that drives how work gets done and kind of the belief that's underneath what everyone does. And I would say making sure people understand that doing the right things or those basic fundamentals the right way really does lead to success. And I would like to say that everyone contributes to that culture. And I mean, it is the truth that if people only nod their heads in the meetings, but then once they leave the meeting, it's a different story. I think that tells you what the true culture is. And you need to make sure that everyone believes where you're going and how applying those best practices matters. So this little chart, it's complicated in the details, but if you can get these basic steps down, it will be a good foundation. So benchmarking, understand where is your lubrication program at against that vision of what you want it to be. Number 2, what are the opportunities that you see after you benchmark? Number 3, define best practice. Look at what your opportunities are and then define, hey, what are we doing versus what the best practice is in industry? And we at Mobil have a lot of those best practices we can share with you, but it's not a big secret. You can do some research and find some best practices around lubrication, but we are happy to help you with that. And probably one of the most important ones is implementing that best practice. Because if you just have the head knowledge and you don't actually do it, I mean, that's where things really count, is when you actually implement it. And lastly, this review and revise, it needs to be at some cadence where you kind of have that pulse check. Hey everyone, where is our lubrication program at? And what are the opportunities? Again, just doing this cycle and using that as your gauge and kind of that routine to make sure you're moving in the right direction. Now, this next slide here, there's a science behind it. If you can think about something and write it down, and this question here, I'll read it for everyone. We'd like you to answer, what's the biggest opportunity or one issue you'd like to fix in your lubrication program? So I'll let you go ahead. You can answer that now, but I'll continue talking. But if you can identify what that issue is and actually write it out, it really does put it in a different part of your brain. There is something about physically writing it. So if you have a pen and pad, I would encourage you to write that down and put the Post-it note in the corner of your office. But also, please type it here. We want to know what those biggest issues are that you're facing, because we want to make sure we're delivering relevant information. And training is a big part of what we want to do. Hence, we're here with the folks at GlobalData. So please take some time to write down what your biggest issue is. And again, these submissions are anonymous, so you type an answer in, it's not going to come floating up here for everyone to see. So please submit that here, and I'll move on. So building off of point number one, how can we change our culture around our lubrication program? So I would suggest this model that I have here: lube meetings, mini trainings, tracking and sharing success. So the first one, lube meetings, it's a informal, fairly frequent touch point to discuss your lubrication program. And how and you don't have to do it the same, but we've done it where we always try to lead with a safety share. It can be related to lubricants or not, but always kind of focus around safety. Like David said, mining doesn't have the best track record with safety, and safety really does start with each one of us and the little decisions that we make. But in that lube meeting, we talk about opening the floor to technicians. What complaints do you have? Are you having any nagging issues that don't go away? Give your team a chance to share, because I think that's when frustration builds, is when people are dealing with the same issues that are frustrating and they feel like they can't get fixed. Having a platform for them to share with peers or with management, and I suggest listening when they bring up issues that can be fixed, and try to fix them quickly, because that's when you can build that culture that, hey, we are going to actually make some changes, and we're going to do what we say, and that's key. And also in these lube meetings, I suggest tracking little projects that, whether it's filtration or, hey, we're going to do these inspections a little differently. We're going to review results we have. So these lube meetings, I would suggest at least once a quarter. And a mine has, the mobile equipment side, the fixed equipment side, the crushers, et cetera, depending on what application you're in. But I would say have those lube meetings be for each of those areas. Second one, trainings. These mini trainings help drive best practices and have a time to share and explore what those best practices are. And I don't know if you've heard about the concept of micro learning, but basically it says that if you can keep a new learnings short and concise, that people retain those more at a higher rate. And so I would say whenever you bring up best practices in your lube meetings, these mini trainings, try to keep them brief, and maybe even review them frequently, so then they can stick in people's minds a little longer. And lastly, and this is kind of for management and reliability managers, things like that. You really need to track and share your success. What I say over here, multiply the good news across teams, sharing good news, sharing those small wins related to the lubrication program. Hey, we made a bet. We wanted to try to extend our oil drain intervals using oil analysis. And hey, guess what? We did it. And share that good news across the organization, and make sure it's tracked in a sustainable place where when people move and change job roles, that those good news learnings will not be lost. So that wraps up point number one. Now we're going to point number two, truly learning from oil analysis. Here, you've heard that the saying, good data in, good data out, but the inverse is also true. Bad data in, bad data out. So quality sampling practices are the foundation of oil analysis, making sure everyone knows how do you take a sample, and you do it that way every time, because or else there's inconsistencies that can be driven just by how you take the sample that can skew your data. And like I talked about, using data to recognize failures and drive reliability initiatives, that's huge, because you can you can detect small failures as they start to happen with oil analysis. And if you're not watching it closely, or you're not really heeding those cautions and alerts that are in the lubricant analysis platform, you're missing out on an opportunity to catch a failure that's coming. And next, I say timing is everything. Evaluate time to failure versus time between samples. So if you have an extremely high speed critical fan or a blower, because of the nature of that application, it could fail quickly if it was exposed to a lot of contaminants or water, things like that. So I encourage you to understand what your critical equipment is and adjust your sampling frequency to match that criticality. So in general, we recommend at least once a quarter. Something that's newer to the market and is kind of spreading a little more, the last one, online oil sensors. These, like David also mentioned, technology is always changing. AI and all of that is driving significant improvements, but online oil sensors for those critical assets is one thing that is gaining traction where it makes sense. Things like this are not cheap, but when you have a critical asset that can fail quickly and it's going to cost you a significant amount of money in production, or just the cost of the asset, it makes sense to invest in some sensors that will watch that in real time. So this next chart, I just try to throw up an example. These different colored data points just show a trend of iron in different machines. And here, whatever was being done with the units in red, just for simplicity and the time we have, we can't dive into an exact example, but whatever you're doing in the units that are red, you see that the trend, the wear rate generation on those assets is significantly lower than the yellow and gray. And just something simple like this, plotting out your data and throwing on some trend lines, but you need to be very intentional with understanding what's different and having those kind of controlled groups where you understand, hey, we're gonna be intentional and do this experiment. We're gonna try this to see if this works differently with group A versus group B. So that's just a crude example of just throwing on some trend lines, but the more data you have, and when you know it's good data, you can learn a lot. All right, the third topic, life extension and synthetics. So I'm going to talk about some reliability strategies to start here. So this time-based changes or run to failure. If anybody's taken any reliability courses, you'll know that way back in the Industrial Revolution, things were either run to failure or they would just change everything just based on time. Now, I threw up some examples of some mining mobile equipment time-based activities. Most often you'll change an engine every 25,000 hours, and final drives, you're going to rebuild them 15,000 hours. Engine oil, you're going to change that every 500 hours. We do not recommend run to failure. That's why I got a big red X on there. That's known. Running to failure is not a best practice. Conversely, time-based changes, to a certain extent, if you are too conservative with that time interval that you select, you are overpaying for that insurance of time-based changes. So now, where do you go from there? Optimized condition-based. And what I mean by this term optimized, that means you use the tools like inspections and oil analysis to figure out, hey, is our schedule of time-based changes from up here, is that actually optimized? Are we being way too conservative with our time-based changes? And now, if there's Star Wars fans, there's a balance between condition-based and time-based. So, because if you're doing just purely condition-based all the time, if you're a scheduler for the mine, that's a nightmare. Doing everything by condition. Oh, hey, oh, shoot. We need to change the oil in that final drive. We need to change the oil in that transmission. Quick, quick, quick. Get that scheduled. That's not fun. So that's why I have this who will bring balance to the force between time-based and condition-based. So a little bit of humor in here in case you're falling asleep. But this last picture that I have down here below, this is an example of an engine rebuild that we did. And we did just that, where the customer was at a certain engine change frequency, and we were very intentional to look at oil analysis. And this particular customer was using our Mobil full synthetic Delvac 1 engine oil for the life of the engine. And we made a very concerted effort to extend that out. And we were able to extend the life of this engine out to almost double their normal rebuild frequency. And we can share more information on that later, but that's an example of how synthetics can really make a difference, where this particular engine being able to go almost twice as far as the OEM rebuild frequency, that saved a significant amount of money in just the uptime that the truck was continued hauling, and also just the cost of an engine. I think nowadays a 3516 or C175 is about $250,000 US, maybe even up to $350,000. So if you can save those rebuilds, that's real money back to you, the customer. So this last little note here is some examples of where we've been able to extend the life using synthetics. So some very impressive numbers down there that if you're familiar with those components, you recognize how that's very uncommon results down there. So this next is just another example. ExxonMobil has an oil sands mine up in Canada, and this shows the rear differentials the OEM recommends rebuilding at 12,000 hours. The final drives, they recommend rebuilding at 8,000, and oil drain intervals, if you're using synthetic, you can go out to 6,000 hours. This last line shows you where this particular customer was able to extend the life out to. They got their differentials out to 24,000 hours, their final drives out to 36,000 hours, and their oil drain interval was 36,000 hours. And I have a little asterisk there because depending on your duocone seal situation, if you have a leak in that duocone seal, then you're going to contaminate the final drives with that brake cooling oil that then your viscosity is going to be way off and you'll have to change it. So when that did not happen, they could extend that out significantly. So a little more details around filtration and component life extension that's from that previous example. How they did that, they would filter the oil every 750 to 1,000 hours. So whenever the truck was in for other work, they would hook up the filter cart and filter. And I have the notes here of what filters were used, and a heater is used as well, just to keep the oil warmed up so it flows a little better. And you can see here in the upper right, before filtration, you have wear metals, you have potential contamination. Those can be easily filtered out. And that's how you get to clean oil after filtration, which keep it clean, cool, and dry. If you can keep the oil clean, you're not going to have abrasive wear. If you can keep it cool, you're going to keep oxidation at a minimum. If you can keep it dry, water is a killer of bearings. So if you can keep water out of there, your components are going to last a long time. So I'm sorry, I'll go back here. Didn't mean to do that yet. These pictures here on the bottom, these look like brand new components, but as you can see, these are at that maximized life, and these are inspections from real components, and they look brand new. So when you can keep the oil very, very clean, that's a significant improvement in life. This next chart shows another facet of a reliability strategy that goes with component life extensions. So without going too far into detail, magnetic plugs are a key part of certain components like the differential, wheel hubs, final drives. And if you can add to your reliability program to track things, like you can trend things and make sure you catch something that, actually I made a mistake there. It needs to be trending down or up. But if something looks out of the ordinary, you need to have a reliability strategy in place so you can catch that. Don't throw away good data, good information, because the mechanic might see this and he might be like, oh shoot, boy, that's weird. It didn't look like that before. Or depending on how large your fleet is, your team might be looking at so many different components that it just gets lost in the shuffle. But if it gets recorded and is going to be alarmed on, or somebody will be alerted if they see a 5 or a 6 rating on a magnetic plug, it just needs to be made note of so it's not ignored. And then you could trend that with oil analysis, say, oh, hey, we're getting a lot of contamination in this final drive or in this other component. We need to do some extra filtration, something like that. So just encouraging you to not throw away good data and keep track of it. This next slide talks about how a basic service interval frequency for some Mobil equipment would be a B, C, and D service. And these service frequencies, you do like an oil change at 500, some safety inspections, tires, things like kind of low touch on the truck. But then when it comes in for the second 500-hour service, now you're at 1,000. That 1,000-hour service will maybe have oil samples, another oil change, transmission oil sample, steering and hydraulic fluid work. And then you'd have another 1,500 hours in here where you, excuse me, where you'd repeat the 500-hour service. But what I'm getting at is you have different major inspections or work that's going to be done at the A, B, C, and D service. This next slide shows if you can optimize your service interval frequency to eliminate that 500-hour service, hey, upgrade to an engine oil that can handle 1,000-hour oil drains. And that's something that we do with our customers. Myself as a field engineer, we do those activities a lot. Let's optimize our oil drain intervals for our engines. Just reducing or taking out that 500-hour service, that for a truck that's going to operate around 7,000 hours a year, which that's pretty good utilization, that will free up 7 oil changes for the year. which that is an increase of about 1% availability. So if you track machine uptime and availability for your fleet, you will know that a 1% change in availability is a significant improvement for your fleet. So the reason I bring this up is because if you can be intentional about how you perform maintenance and understand why you're performing maintenance and make changes like optimizing your service interval, you will move the needle and improve your availability significantly. Another best practice I really need to touch on is oil reclamation. A huge driver for oil changes is contamination. Water, dirt, wear metals are easily filtered out. And a lot of times the oil, especially if you're using synthetic, the oil is not bad. You just need to get the contaminants out. So I say down here, do not dump good oil. Instead, filter it. So it takes a little intentionality, getting a tote system and filters set up in a separate area. But instead of throwing that away or sending it to the recycling facility, try to filter it, because it will help save on lubricant cost. And also you can sample to make sure that there's no other issues with like coolant, things like that. Obviously, if it's contaminated with coolant, you can't filter that out. But particulates, like I've got shown up here, that's easily filtered out and could save some money. Okay, one of the last topic here, energy efficiency and Mobil synthetic. So we've done many field trials, and this picture in the top right is a large data acquisition system called a Duitron that we've used to perform these field trials and show that there are significant energy efficiency savings with synthetics. So I'm going to talk about how fuel is one of the largest costs for mobile equipment fleet at a mine. And the field testing we've done has shown there's an upside of anywhere between 1% and 5%. So transmissions have the largest upside, just because you're dealing with so many sets of gears and bearings, and when your lubricant can transmit that power most efficiently, we've shown in these field trials, and the field trials have strain gauges, very sensitive fuel flow meters, and we're managing the load on the haul truck. We're managing the atmospheric conditions, the floor conditions of the mine, driver variability. That driver is going to shift at the same point. You're going to go to this speed in this section of the haul. You're going to shift at the same point. So I mean, that energy efficiency testing is a significant undertaking. It takes several days, and a truck is going to be out of production for that entire time. So it's a sacrifice for the mine as well. But for example, what does a 5% efficiency gain mean for a haul truck fleet of 30 trucks? So if you do the math, what I did, and I will show here, a fuel burn of 35 gallons an hour times an operating 7,500 hours per year at a bulk diesel fuel cost of, and this is US, $3.50 a gallon, times 5% efficiency gain across 30 trucks, that is $1.3 million. So I challenge you to maybe do some math like that for your fleet. And again, this is comparing mineral, the basic mineral transmission fluid versus our Mobil full synthetic transmission fluid, and we saw a 5% gain. But I encourage you to understand what these potential savings might look like for your fleet, and the same thing for the finals and the diffs. That's a standard FD1 rated mineral fluid for the finals and diffs compared to our full synthetic, and we saw a 3.5% benefit. So there's some real savings, and this was based on many different field trials that were done in different areas of the country. Now, all of this is to help you increase uptime, decrease unplanned downtime, improving margins per ton. Like David said in the beginning, margins are getting smaller, demands on each mine are increasing, and we really need to help bring those margins back to the customer. And when there's savings anywhere, we want to help you guys find those. So again, I'm just going to end with this quote. Success is neither magical nor mysterious. Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying the basic fundamentals. And I just talked a lot about those fundamentals, and feel free to reach out with any other questions. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and thank you for listening, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a fantastic session with some great insights. We're opening the floor now to take some questions from the audience, and I can just see in the Q&A box there's already some questions in there. So Jonathan, I'm going to start off with a question for you from the audience. How would you suggest starting the culture shift to focus more on the value of lubrication? Our mind doesn't seem to think it needs to be a focus area.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question. I would say, like I thought, and I'm going to even kind of shoot back here, but that's why the first thing I talked about is those lube programs or those lube meetings. Well, I'll just speak to the question without trying to find the slide, but I would say try to document any events that resulted in downtime, and if your mine has a production value to downtime for either fixed assets or mobile equipment assets, I would say when you can document the root cause and understand, hey, this was a blatant lubrication issue where if we would have taken better care of the lubricant or had better training, this likely would not have happened. That's the art of root cause failure analysis is a huge factor as well. I'm trying to really understand why something happened. When you can document that failure and help management understand, hey, lubrication needs to be a focus area because we could have prevented this. So I would challenge you to try to share instances like that where, maybe after hearing this presentation, you could latch on to a few things that you could, take your magnifying glass to and look into a little more to see if you can find out why that happened. And thank you for changing the slide here. But I think this graphic, benchmarking, identify opportunities, understand what the best practice is, implementing that best practice. And if you're stuck kind of here defining what the opportunities are, like I just mentioned, really working with your team to keep your eyes open for some of those failures that really cost the mine a lot of money. And I think that gets attention of management pretty quickly.
Great, thank you. You have another question. We're new to the concept of filtration. How do we get started and know what to buy?
Yeah, I would say in general, filtration can be something where you can kind of chase ISO codes almost obsessively, where I would say just get a good, maybe a 1 gallon per minute, 3 liters a minute, 4 liters a minute pump. And like for the final drives, the filtration that I referenced there, they had a 25 micron and a 10 micron filter. And this is for heavy gear oil. Do not go any tighter than 10 microns. And also understanding the beta ratio. The beta ratio for filters is how efficient the filter is. It means if I have 1,000 particles coming into my filter, I want to make sure that my filter will filter out 999 of those particles. That is a good, highly efficient filter. So understand, get good efficiency filters, a beta rating of 1,000. That would be the example I just told you of 99.9% efficient. And also a general rather low flow pump. But also there's lots of resources out there with our distributors, and also as field engineers, feel free to reach out if there's more specific questions around hydraulic applications can handle a little tighter filtration versus a large final drive like I had in my example. But I hope that guidance helped a little bit anyway.
Thanks, Jonathan. There's another question that's come through. We're not currently doing oil analysis. Is it a lot of effort to get a program started and assets uploaded?
I can speak to Mobil lubricant analysis. That's Mobil's system. And I will say we have some handy tools where if you already have an existing spreadsheet of assets with, make, model number, the unique asset ID number for your company, you can upload that spreadsheet into our system and it will create all those assets for you. And the very a critical part of Mobil lubricant analysis that's a huge advantage. We work a lot with various OEMs across the mining sector and commercial over-the-road trucks and the power industry, et cetera, et cetera. But we have the unique caution and alert limits that come with those various OEMs that are built into the system. So as long as like your engine, like I mentioned before, a Cat C175 or a Cummins QSK 60, those engines might have different limits for different parameters. Those are built into Mobil lubricant analysis. And I would say, to answer the question, it could be very daunting, but we recognize that and have some shortcuts within Mobil lubricant analysis that are designed to save you some time and get your program up and running.
Great, thank you. And then one last question. From what you presented, what's the biggest area that can impact savings for a site?
I would say the energy efficiency piece is quite significant, particularly around fuel. If you have a largely mechanical drive fleet, the energy efficiency associated with synthetics, Mobil synthetics around the transmission, and also the final drives and the differential for the large haul trucks. Just because that calculation I did was based on fuel cost. And for a fleet of 30 trucks, it was $1.3 million US. So that's kind of for a mechanical fleet. But if you have a Komatsu electric drive fleets, I would say the component life and oil drain extension would be a significant savings. Just taking the oil drain, we have our Mobil Delvac Ultra engine oil that's proven to go out to 2,000-hour oil drain intervals for engine oil. And when you can limit how much you take the asset in and it's sitting in the shop, that's a significant savings, because you don't have to have redundancy built into your fleet, and the asset is actually out in the field making money for you. So between the energy efficiency piece and the oil drain extension or component life extension projects, those are two really big ones.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for all those answers and for a great presentation. And thank you to Mobil for sponsoring the session. For all the attendees, you'll receive an email tomorrow telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access it through the website www.arena-international.com/events. Also a reminder as well about the white paper, Optimizing Uptime, the Essential Steps to Keeping Your Equipment Strategy on Track, that you can download directly from the related content box in the webinar platform. And it just remains for me to say thank you very much for the attendees for joining our session today, and goodbye.